So I first met Kurt at the first college party I ever went to on the very first day I got to Ohio University. He was this like super conventionally handsome frat boy type of guy. The type of guy who just a few weeks before in high school would have never sat at my lunch table. But he's introduced to me and he's like, "Hey, what's up? My name's Kurt." And I'm just like, "Oh, of course it is." Of course. And I'm like, "And you probably love Dave Matthews and have a closet full of polo shirts." And he's like, "How did you know?" So weirdly though, we hit it off, and at the end of the night he offers to walk me home, even though I live way on the other side of campus from him. And I just kept looking at him and wondering, how long can I keep this up? How long can I keep convincing this person that I am in his league? And it turns out the answer to that question is 2 years and 37 days. Which is when, junior year, Kurt suddenly realized he was making a terrible mistake and would very much like to sleep with hotter people. And so he politely excused himself from our relationship one day while we were sitting in my bedroom. And we just kind of sat there in silence for a few minutes. And then he goes, "So what are you thinking?" And I answered honestly. I said, "I'm wondering if my mom can get her money back for that plane ticket she bought you for Thanksgiving." And he scowls at me and he goes, "That's really insensitive, Erin." So I get up and I get all this stuff. I get his Rick Riley book, his toothbrush, and I give it back to him. And I award myself sole custody of our pet gerbils, Leroy and Martha. And he leaves. And that's it, and it's just me, and I'm just feeling so crushed. I mean, Kurt, there were a lot of things about Kurt that weren't necessarily ideal. For instance, he once wet the bed with me in it. And that was not my favorite thing. But still, I mean, still, he was still so out of my league, and really, he was a good guy. He was still that good guy who had walked me home that first day with no ulterior motives. And I was really just broken up about it. And then I reminded myself that without Kurt, I would never have to watch Family Guy again. And I felt a little bit better after that. Even more so when I reminded myself I would never have to go camping again. And so this made me realize something. This made me realize that I could focus entirely on the positive aspects of this breakup. I could pretend to be fine until I actually was fine, and therefore I could skip over all of the feelings that I was supposed to be having. It was a genius plan and not at all psychologically unhealthy. So I was very psyched about this. I got up and I went through everything in my room and I found everything that reminded me of Kurt, and I put all of it into a giant cardboard box and I taped it up and I gave it to my dad and I asked him to put it in the basement and not let me open it for 6 months. Because I wanted some of that stuff eventually, like my VHS copy of Ferris Bueller, which we'd watched on our first date. But I didn't want it then at that moment in my face reminding me to be sad, because I was not gonna be sad. So over the next few days, I started my carefully planned regimen designed to get me over Kurt. It involved a lot of drinking, a lot of watching Sex and the City, I took up jogging. I read a book called, it's called A Breakup Because It's Broken. And I felt very empowered by that. And as the author recommended, I rearranged all the furniture in my apartment to give myself a feeling of a fresh new start. And I was feeling pretty good about that too. And everything was going really well. I mean, I hadn't once drunk-dialed Kurt. I hadn't cried in public, which was a good thing. On Halloween, I successfully made out with a Ninja Turtle. I think it was Raphael, but to my shame, I don't quite remember. But overall, things were going really well. Except the only problem was I had roommates. I had 3 roommates at the time of this breakup. The first roommate was my friend Anna, who was this photography major who wore a lot of scarves and spoke exclusively in abstracts. And she was involved in a lot of the on-campus protests that never seemed to accomplish much, and involved a lot of kind of like infighting about things like whether or not they would espouse the tenets of communism at the Iraq War protest, and like when did the vegans get to talk at the Kucinich rally and stuff like that. Under extreme duress, I once bought a t-shirt from one of her friends that said Bush eats babies on it. That one got ruined in the washer pretty quick. I will believe a lot of bad things about George Bush, but that's probably not one of them, in his defense. Probably not a baby eater. You heard it here first. So, and then my second roommate, in contrast, was Jeremy, who was this muscle-bound, crew-cutted, two-time Iraq War veteran. And he had a fiancée who never once spent the night at our apartment, but would drop by every now and then with freshly baked cookies. And Jeremy and Anna were once actually quoted in the same newspaper article about on-campus recruitment issuing radically opposing viewpoints. I cut that one out and put it on the fridge. You can probably guess by now that Jeremy was not a huge fan of us. He sort of fucking hated us. Which was fine. I mean, I understand why, really. But I didn't feel like he had to be that hostile. He could have shown up for taco night every now and then, is all I'm saying. And so my last roommate was Stacy. Stacy was a senior and a psych major. There were a lot of interesting things about Stacy. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say maybe the most memorable thing about Stacy was that she liked to have super loud gangbangs in her loft bedroom. Because it was a loft bedroom, there was no door on it, only stairs going up, and my room happened to be at the very bottom of these stairs. So I got to hear all the sound effects, which was pretty cool. Including her offering to drive them all back to their freshman dorms afterwards, which I thought was nice. It's very nice. It's, you know, the polite thing at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, really. I mean, I didn't want to judge about group sex. I mean, it was like 2006 or whatever. But I mean, I really felt like she could have saved it for a weekend. You know? People have tests in the morning, and there is a time and a place to have loud gangbang sex in your loft bedroom, and you know, that wasn't it. It's just my opinion. So, this was the environment I found myself in at the time of my breakup, and it got worse a week after because Anna, my scarf-wearing friend, broke up with her boyfriend of 3 months when he, of course, left to join the Peace Corps. And so, if you looked at me and Anna during this time, you would have never been able to guess which one of us had been dumped after 3 months and which one had been dumped after 2 years. I was still keeping everything under wraps according to my plan. Anna, by contrast, wailed like a fucking banshee for weeks on end in our living room. She'd show up in the doorway to my bedroom and she'd go, "Erin, do you ever think that these small moments might resonate forever and that the voices that speak through us now and the paths that we go down might result in a different life altogether? One we never thought could have come from within us." And I would say, "Fuck me, Anna, it's 9 a.m. And she'd start crying again. I'd have to get out of bed and reassure her that our choices wouldn't resonate that bad in the abyss of the future. So, meanwhile, kind of to top everything off, my junior prom date showed up on my doorstep and started demanding to know why we weren't getting back together now that Kurt was out of the picture. And I was like, "I don't know, probably because you dumped me in the 12th grade for Laura Thomas because she had bigger tits than me, and I emotionally moved on. Like, I don't know why I have to answer this question right now. I don't feel like this is something I should have to deal with." And so he wasn't a huge fan of that. So I'm dealing with all of this tension and all of these feelings that other people have, and it's starting to kind of crack the shell that I've made around myself, but not yet. I'm still holding out until the day that I'm cleaning my gerbil's cage and I realize that I have not been a very good single parent. and my gerbils are dying. Their heads are all swollen, and they're kind of like stumbling drunkenly around the cage. It's not, why are you laughing? This is pain and suffering. So it's obviously very serious, and they're obviously in a lot of pain, and it becomes too many layers of shit for me to really deal with. It's just too depressing. So I burst into tears, like big boogery sobs, and I pick up my gerbil cage and I drive downtown to the vet's and I set the cage on the counter and I say, I need you to put my gerbils to sleep. And the woman behind the counter is very startled by this. And I don't know if it's because I'm of the sobbing or if it's because I've just asked her to put gerbils to sleep, which I don't think they really do because gerbils cost like $5. But she calls the vet over, and the vet has a look, and she tells me that they'll take Martha, but that Leroy might get better with some medicine. And they put the medicine in the water bottle, and they tell me there's no charge, kind of pityingly. I think they think that I'm crying about the gerbils, which, I mean, I am in a way, but I'm more like crying about the general misery of my existence. So I take Leroy, and we get back in the car, and I'm like, it's just you and me now, Leroy, all alone against the world. And we drive home. Leroy passed away of natural causes my senior year. And I couldn't bring myself to touch his tiny, lifeless body to bury him, so I called the one person within a 50-mile radius who I knew would touch dead things for me, and that was Kurt. And he came without question. He brought a cookie tin to use as Leroy's coffin, and he dug a hole in the yard outside my apartment with the ice scraper from his car, and we buried Leroy and said a few words. And it occurred to me in that moment that maybe my relationship with Kurt was not something that I really wanted to forget. And I thought about my box of Kurt stuff that I'd given to my dad, and it'd been over a year since I taped up that box, and still I hadn't opened it. And to be honest, I hadn't even thought about it in a really long time. And 5 years later, that box still wasn't opened. But my dad moved and the box fell apart, so I had to go through it. And it was fucking hilarious. I highly recommend this if you get dumped. Put all of the love letters in a box and read them 5 years later, and you will laugh your fucking ass off. It will be awesome. So that is my parting advice to you. Thanks.